When I need answers about anything to do with personal growth, I go straight to my mom and my aunt. Here they are, Priscilla Babin and Tina Gilliatt with the Sister Sauce. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sister Sauce. I'm Priscilla and I'm here with my beautiful sister Tina. Hey Tina.
Hi, everybody.
How's everybody doing today? I don't know. We can't hear you. Tina, you got anything fun going on?
I physical therapy for my jaw.
Ooh.
And we're going to a spaghetti dinner this
Oh yeah,
weekend.
a
So
fancy spaghetti dinner.
I'm excited to be served by young people.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
other than that, nothing major. How about you?
Got my bathroom ripped out. My
Hooray for
bathroom.
renovations.
Yes, it's demolition was a little loud and messy, but and I'm having to bunk in one of my elder children's beds for a few nights, but it's fine. It'll be fantastic when it's done.
Oh,
So
yeah, it's an
I'm happy.
adventure. It's
Yep.
exciting.
Yep. Yep.
Well, yay. Yay.
Yay. You got some hot sauce today?
I do.
Okay.
So today we're talking in our meat sauce
Mm-hmm.
about National Volunteer Week. And so my hot sauce is sort of related to that. As you know, I've been a volunteer leader in a couple of different organizations. And I just wanted to say that when you are in any type of job, paid or volunteer, you should be committed. I've heard younger people say occasionally, oh, they don't pay them enough for that. Or I'll say so and so was not helpful at a retail place. And sometimes my daughter will say, well, what do you expect? Look how little bit they paid. They probably don't want to be there. And my whole philosophy is if you accept a position and you agree to a salary, then you should do that job to the best of your ability. Now, if you can leverage your ability to get more money, all power to you. But you need to go about it in a professional way and make sure that you are delivering on your promise. That promise being the commitment, I will work for you for X amount of dollars an hour, and these are the things I will do. So that's relative to paid positions. But when you're a volunteer, there's a similar sort of contract there. If, for instance, I was a district director in Toastmasters, and we had people that reported to our district trio, who were the top three, and those people were getting credit for the roles that they were serving in. So, for example, we had an area director role where the area director had to visit clubs and submit reports and things like that. And sometimes it was very difficult for me to get my area directors to do things on time. But for the most part, I was really blessed in that they did everything they were supposed to do. But I've seen other situations where people have been in a volunteer leader role and it's been a nightmare for them to get anything done because people have a laissez-faire attitude about the fact that they're a volunteer and they don't always follow through on their promises or their commitments. And so that's what my hot sauce is about today. Whatever you commit to, the word is commit, whatever you commit to, whether you're getting paid monetarily or whether you are just reaping the reward of the pleasure of knowing that you helped an organization or a person, once you commit, you should follow through on that commitment. And I'm not saying that things don't happen and life doesn't get in the way occasionally, but you should commit fully.
Mm-hmm.
That is my hot sauce.
I think that's some good hot sauce.
I'm all about commitment.
Yeah. Our cousin Jennifer, shout out to Jen, volunteered to help with providing some desserts for our fancy spaghetti dinner on Saturday, tomorrow. And her house flooded. And I
I
messaged her
know.
this morning and I was like, are you really sure you want to do this? Because I know you're dealing with a mess at your house. And she said, no, I'm doing it. So
She's wonderful.
she is committed. And what a blessing. Oh my goodness. I can't I can't thank her enough. It's been hard to get people to volunteer to give us desserts, even the people who have, that's their job, making desserts, and they're just ghosting me. So for Jen to step up like that is amazing. So
That's awesome.
very thankful.
Well,
Yeah.
we are committed to help with that too. And I told AJ we would have to go somewhere to buy a dessert because I cannot see making a dessert that would be tasty enough to auction off. Unless I make a funfetti cake using cake mix, then I could do that, I suppose. But at any rate, know that I am willing to donate for that as well. And by the time
That's
everybody
very
listens
sweet of
to this
you.
podcast, all the desserts will be eaten.
Yeah.
So sorry, guys. Well, we have an exciting topic for today. It's National Volunteer Week, not this coming week, but the following week.
Mhm.
But this, by doing it early, we're giving everybody the opportunity to think about if they want to volunteer somewhere.
Yeah,
Or also, maybe organizations, we're giving them time to think about how they could celebrate their volunteers.
that's true. Or
That's a good
utilize
idea,
volunteers
isn't
if
it?
they haven't already had volunteers.
I'm
There's
sorry,
a
what?
lot of, or utilize volunteers where they have not had volunteers before.
This is true. This is
We're
true.
giving them a lot of sauce to think about.
Marinade.
We're giving them extra marinade this week.
Yes. I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
So, when we started talking about volunteerism and that being the theme for the podcast this weekend, I remembered I had read a little essay. I don't know if it's a poem or an essay. I'm not really sure what you would call it. It's short, but by Irma Bombeck about volunteerism, and it's called "So Long, Volunteers," and I'm going to read it to y'all. I had a dream the other night that every volunteer in this land had set sail for another country. I stood smiling on the pier, shouting, "Goodbye, phone committees. Goodbye, disease of the month. No more getting out the vote. No more playground duty bake sales, rummage sales, thrift shops, and 3-hour meetings." As the boat got smaller, I reflected, serves them right, that bunch of yes people. All they had to do was put their tongues firmly against the roof of their mouth and make an O sound. No. It would certainly have spared them a lot of grief. Oh well, who needs them? The hospital was quiet as I passed it, the reception desk vacant. Rooms were devoid of books, flowers, and voices. The children's wing held no clowns, no laughter. The home for the aged was like a tomb. The blind listened for a voice that never came. The infirm were imprisoned in wheelchairs that never moved. Food grew cold on trays that would never reach the hungry. The social agencies had closed their doors, unable to implement their programs of scouting, recreation, drug control, unable to help the retarded. It's an old thing. Handicapped, lonely, and abandoned. Health agencies had signs in their windows: cures for cancer, birth defects, multiple sclerosis, heart disease, etc., have been canceled because of lack of interest. The schools were strangely quiet, with no field trips and no volunteer classroom aides. Symphony halls and the museums that had been built and stocked by volunteers were dark and would remain that way. The flowers in churches and synagogues withered and died. Children in day nurseries lifted their arms, but there was no one to hold them in love. Alcoholics cried out in despair, but no one answered. The poor had no recourse for health care or legal aid. I fought in my sleep to regain a glimpse of the ship of volunteers just one more time. It was to be my last glimpse of a decent civilization. That's very deep. It's from Irma Bombeck.
Wow. Yeah, it is.
It's from a long time ago, so a little of the language is antiquated, but you know, still feel like it makes the point that volunteers are so necessary in a thriving society.
It's interesting because I know we're going to talk a little bit about statistics at the end, but when you think about it, how many people are there that never volunteer for anything? I mean, for us, I think it's always come natural because we've been active in churches and we've helped at schools where our kids have gone to school. But I would imagine that there are people who have never had that experience of
Mm.
volunteering anywhere. And so maybe this discussion today will give them some food for thought.
Mm. I often feel like I ought to volunteer for more things, but I've had children in my house for so long that takes up a lot of my
Well,
time.
and you do volunteer a lot with whatever school things are going on and whatever church things are going on. I know
Yeah.
you're going to be helping with spaghetti dinner this
Hmm.
weekend, and
Yep. Yep. But I'm
it's
excited to,
organic that we
as
do
my
that.
kids, yeah, I'm excited that my kids are getting older, and that's one thing to look forward to. I'm gonna miss having kids in the house when they're all grown and flown, but I I'm looking forward to using that extra time to volunteer and do fun things. Maybe I'll be social. That'd be crazy.
With this being my year of simplification, I've thought a lot about that this year because I have spent a lot of time volunteering for organizations that I'm part of, and I think I can't possibly continue to volunteer as much as I do if I want to simplify. But then on the other hand, I don't want to get lazy about it to where I
Mm.
don't volunteer anymore because I do think it's important. The problem that I have is I get excited about stuff and then I overcommit and sometimes under deliver. So my hot sauce was for me as much as for everyone else, although my under delivering is never not being committed because I
Yeah.
do live up to my commitments. I just can't always deliver at the quality level I would like to. So just some marinade for us to think about. I'm excited because we're going to share today some of the surprising benefits of volunteerism.
Hmm.
And these are from an article online, which we will share the link. It's from helpguide.org articles. And so we'll share these with you and talk about them a little bit. And hopefully you'll see the benefits of volunteering. The first one is that it connects you to other people.
Mm.
So that's kind of exciting because you can volunteer and not only make an impact on the organization that you're part of, which is the assumed benefit, right? But while
Hmm.
you're in the process of helping that organization, it's also helping you because you have the opportunity to connect with other people, sometimes networking, making new friends and contacts. And I volunteer with one organization and went to a dinner for another organization I volunteer with, and then recruited some of the people from the second organization to help with the first. And it worked out great.
Spread the love around.
Yes, yes. So it's a great way to make new friends and contacts and also just strengthen existing relationships if you and a good friend or a sister or a spouse or a partner volunteer together, it
Mhm.
does something for your relationship. It brings you together, brings you closer together. And
Mhm.
we've enjoyed volunteering together at some things.
Mhm.
And my family used to feed the homeless when we were going to our old church years ago. And it was something we did almost every weekend. And it was really a nice benefit of the volunteering is that we spent time together doing something good and it felt really good. And one of the benefits of volunteering as a family is that you're setting an example for your children. And so when you set that example for your children and they see you volunteering and giving back to the community, they understand the importance of it. So you're instilling good behaviors in them. So it's a
Mm,
great opportunity to volunteer as a family and help organizations that you love and trust.
yeah, I could do that and be more social.
Oh, that's the whole thing that I don't like about it is my social anxiety kicks in. But if you have somebody that you're doing it with, like your sister, uh,
Hmm.
then you don't feel as overwhelmed by it, right?
Yep. Yep. It's like a safety blanket, you know?
It was interesting when we used to feed the homeless. I was so nervous the first time I went, and I got more and more comfortable as we went through it. But it was interesting some of the connections that we made with the homeless people. It was
Mm,
the same people often. And so we made some really strong connections with some of them and kept in touch for quite a while and then eventually lost touch. But it was a very good experience.
that's nice.
Yeah.
The second benefit is volunteering is good for your mind and your body. It's good for both mental and physical health. Then they say that volunteering actually helps the effects of stress, like reducing the effects of stress, anger, and anxiety. So maybe the actual work helps with the social anxiety part.
I'm sitting here
And
going, Lord, how much stress would I have if I didn't volunteer so much? If it's reducing my stress.
maybe if there's too much, maybe if you're overdoing it, there's potential to overdo anything, right? But I think the being in community like that is good, making those connections. And then if you're working with, let's say you're working with something that you really are passionate about, like animals, pets can reduce your stress, unless they bite you, I guess. But animals, if you're volunteering at the ASPCA or whatever,
Yeah,
that can, and I feel like, I don't know about other people, but for some people, there's certain tasks that, especially like for me, and I know probably for you, and you definitely too, Tina, is like organizing things. Like if you're put a task of organizing a table of things or a closet of things, or and sometimes cleaning, certain kinds of cleaning are very relaxing for me because it's cathartic. If it's something that's really difficult, then it's might not be as cathartic, but those kind of things I think can be good, for stress. And then they also say that volunteering helps combat depression. And being in contact with people on a regular basis is really good to counteract loneliness and give you, sort of this community support, that keeps you from being all up in your head and alone, which I think is definitely beneficial for people who are, who live alone or single folks like me.
mhm.
I have two other people in my house right now though, so rarely alone, and a cat. I'm surprised I'm alone right now. And they also say that when they measure hormone and brain activity, the research has showed that being helpful actually delivers pleasure to your brain. So it lights up the pleasure centers in your brain when you're helpful and do kind things for others. And human beings, we have a natural proclivity to be giving and be kind, most of us. Some people maybe don't, but they said the more we give, the happier we feel. So that's whether you're giving your time, talents, or treasures, I guess. And it also would be a boost to your self-confidence because when you're doing good for other people, you get a natural high from, knowing, a little pride, knowing you did a good thing. That's always nice. And so then you feel better about yourself. And it's also motivating because when, it's like we talked about that one other time, when you celebrate those small successes, what it does for meeting your goals later on, other bigger goals. And even if it's not related, it's that confidence booster that really helps. So and also sense of purpose. So if you're retired and don't have work and don't have a lot of other social engagements, volunteering gives you another opportunity there to be busy and be out of the house and do things, keeps your brain active and all that as you get older. And then if it's physical work, of course, that's exercise. So you're getting some exercise and it's good for your heart and everything. They say you have a lower mortality rate if you are a volunteer. Plus, you're walking more. That's good cardiovascular exercise too,
Yeah, yeah.
besides lifting things. And if you're lifting stuff, I guess that's good for you too, unless you unless you overdo it.
And just by nature of reducing your stress, that
Mhm.
helps physically too, which is
Yeah.
probably why your blood pressure goes down and all of the benefits of that.
Hmm.
But yeah. And we hear a lot about older people volunteering, but younger people should volunteer as well.
Yeah. I think we hear it more about older people just because by nature of them having more time if they're not working 24, not
True.
24/7, but
Going to
9 to 5,
school.
whatever.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
So,
the third benefit of volunteering is that you can advance your career. And that goes back to what I just said about the younger people. If you're a younger person and you are trying to decide what career field you want to go in, we talked once before about the career clusters. But if you can get into a volunteer position that relates to the field of study that you're considering going in, it's a great way to sort of get a sneak preview of whatever that job is. So if you are thinking about going into medicine, you might volunteer at a hospital to see what you can learn. You might discover that you don't like being around blood and needles and things like that. And so you may decide, okay, this is not for me. Or you might be thinking of becoming a teacher. And so you volunteer to help at Sunday school or some other organization that works with kids. This will give you an idea of how well you do with kids. And it's a great, if you're thinking about being a librarian, we have a few of those in our family. You can volunteer your time at a library, but it's a great way to kind of get that sneak preview in. And not only does it give you the opportunity to experience the job and the benefits of it, but you learn other things like how to communicate with coworkers. You learn how to work as a team, and you get more comfortable with doing certain things that you'll need to transfer over to your job skills at your real job. And you learn some valuable on the job skills. Like if you volunteer at a hospital, you probably learn some things about administrative sides of the hospital, or if you volunteer at a school, you might learn a lot about the way the school works and the rules there.
Mhm.
And one of the article mentions volunteering as a docent at a museum, which
Mm.
mom had done and then got sick and couldn't continue. But I remember that for her was a lot of walking up and down stairs,
Mhm.
and it would have been great if she had not been going through a health crisis right at that time. But definitely, it's a great thing to get knowledge about whatever it is that you're seeking to do for
Mhm.
payment. You can volunteer and get that skill, but also benefit the organization. And so besides, benefiting the community in a greater whole, you can raise awareness and learn how to fight for your causes. And you can also, like I said, test out a career to make that decision and see if that's something that you're thinking about doing, if it fits within your areas of interest. And sometimes if you go to apply for a job and they find out that you've been serving as a volunteer doing the work that you will have to do as a paid employee, they look at that as experience. I know one of the things that people say all the time is, I'm looking for a job, but it requires experience, but I can't get the experience because I need a job
Mm-hmm.
and I can't find a job. And so it's like a vicious cycle, right? You need experience to get the job, but you can't get the experience because you don't have the job.
Mm-hmm.
But if you volunteer, nobody's going to expect you to have previous experience, and you can gain your experience while serving as a volunteer, which is not great if you can't afford to serve as a volunteer and you have to work full time, but you can find other ways to volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
Want to work for a library? Try working in your church library on the weekends or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've talked about before how it's easier to see potential solutions to problems and things like that when you're just a fly on the wall and when you're not the one actively trying to solve those problems. So I feel like when you're volunteering, it gives you a different view of everything that's going on, and you might actually be more helpful, you know, when if it's a career you're going into, you might have more knowledge going in than you did just from education in that area, because you've actually seen what goes on and see, because learning how to do a skill is only part of the problem. Working with other people and coordinating groups of people who are there for different purposes is a whole nother, a whole nother thing.
I definitely agree with that. I think that's a really good point is as a volunteer, you're getting sort of an outside view.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the trenches and you're in the middle of dealing with a situation, sometimes you have a certain task you have to focus on so you don't look at the big picture, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I know from working at an engineering firm, that when I was involved in projects where I had my own tasks I had to keep track of, I didn't necessarily get the big picture. I just knew I have to do what I have to do for me. But then I was part of a few teams where I was more of an observer and sort of just a backup.
Mm-hmm.
And on those, I think I learned more because I got to see the big picture and said, oh, that's why it was so important for me to do this, this, and this in that other project, because this is how it contributes to the big picture. So, yeah, I agree. I like that. That's an excellent point.
Yeah. And a lot of careers, they do the educational part. They encourage you or even require you to observe. Like when I was in school for early childhood education, that was a whole semester. We had a class that was dedicated to going to a school, a preschool, and observing and taking notes and like formulating, you know, our thoughts on what we had seen in action and what really was a learning opportunity and what were things that we had already learned about in class and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Clover's getting to do a little bit of that this weekend. I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about the project they're helping with, but and they're doing more observing than actual helping, but it's they're helping out on a commercial shoot, and it's that's their future professional goals, is to be part of how, you know, film and whatnot works, cinematography and that kind of thing. And so this has been a real eye-opening experience for them.
Yeah.
So
What a great
really cool.
opportunity to learn
Mm-hmm.
about production and
Mm-hmm.
direction and all. That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Yep. And the next one is the next benefit of volunteering is that it brings fun and fulfillment to your life. And that's, we already kind of touched on it, but if you're more motivated to volunteer and everything, if it's something that you're real interested in, whether it's something you want to go into as a profession, or if it's just a passion or interest that you have, like if you really love animals and you want to go volunteer at an animal shelter, or you love books and you want to volunteer at the library, or maybe um you love, education and you want to volunteer at a school, or you have a passion for helping people and you want to go feed the homeless and or visit people in the hospital. There's something for everything. And so if you find something that's meaningful to you, then it will be meaningful. It will be a benefit in that that's, something that's related to what gives you joy and feeds that passion. So that's a easy, obvious benefit. I would not want to volunteer somewhere where they clean fish. You know, that wouldn't be real motivated and it wouldn't bring me a lot of joy.
Or clean toilets.
Not either. Yeah.
It's a
But
dirty job.
some people probably like to clean toilets.
I don't know if I'd want to do it on a volunteer basis, but
Mm. And for some people, they work real hard during the week and they might have some time on the weekend where they want to just do something that's different and outside of what their normal day is like.
that's
Like
true.
helping
That's
plant
true.
gardens, and I'll take volunteers if anybody wants to work in my garden. It's a mess.
You know, sometimes volunteer work too is about doing something that's helpful, but not necessarily tedious.
Mm,
That, you know, especially if you're working in like an intense job all week long and you want to
mhm,
help, but you don't want to have to do a lot of thinking. If you volunteer and do something like cleaning bathrooms or sweeping or dusting. We had a church work day right before Easter where some of us went and cleaned. I got the job of cleaning the windows, and I enjoyed that. I was up and down on the ladder, and the only thing I didn't like about it was like the outside of the windows. It just, it's like you're smearing the dirt around. It was like
mm,
impossible. I needed a hose with but I
mhm.
enjoyed it, and it's something that had to be done, and it was great for me because I didn't have to think a lot about it. Normally when I'm at church, my brain is ready to explode because I'm dealing with media problems or audio problems or whatever. And so it was nice to hang out at church and just spray Windex and wipe.
Did you
I
get a
liked it.
squeegee?
I did not. I could have
Oh,
used a squeegee and a hose, I'm telling you.
next time.
I just had Windex and paper towels.
I love a good squeegee. Yeah, we've got some more statistics. Over 1 billion people volunteer worldwide. That's a lot of
Wow.
volunteers.
And 1 in 4 Americans volunteer.
Mm,
1 in 4. So I think we could do better though with that. I mean, that's
probably so.
25%. And I would imagine if that includes kids, a lot of kids don't
That's
volunteer.
what I was gonna say. I wonder who's included in that because you got to figure that there's people who are maybe wheelchair bound and can't
That's
do
true
certain
too. So
things,
maybe
you
one in
know.
four is not so bad, but Hmm.
But people in wheelchairs can volunteer and do other stuff too. But there's a lot of gray area there as far as physical or mental abilities and things like that. So 1 in 4 is not terrible. That's pretty good. But we could probably always do better.
Yeah.
We should shoot for 2 and 4.
Mhm. Or at least 1.5.
Yeah. 0.5 of me will volunteer.
3 out of 8.
Yeah, there you go. That's how you do fractions. I am not good at math. Okay. Women are more likely to volunteer than men, apparently, both formally and informally.
Mhm. I
We
like the
hard
next one.
workers.
Baby boomers are more likely to be volunteers than any other generation. Hooray for the baby boomers. Whoop,
Okay,
whoop.
boomer.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gen X is mostly known for feeling persecuted and coming out stronger for it, but we should probably be better volunteers. COVID, unfortunately, caused 11% of volunteer organizations in the US to cease operations. That's very sad.
That is
COVID was
sad.
COVID has been poop. It's done
Yeah.
a lot of bad things, raised prices on a lot of things. A lot of people, besides people dying and having chronic illness that hung on after and things like that, we've had a lot of people just quit working, which is a sad thing. It's it's never good to have whole organizations that are about volunteering disappear.
Mm.
Hopefully we can bring that back. Mm.
Yeah. And the article, obviously, that we pulled these from is a little older, but it's saying that 75% of Americans think that volunteering would be more important after the pandemic. And I'm sure that's already been proven true. It's
Hopefully, yeah.
difficult. I know in the organizations I've helped with, there's a shortage of volunteers now because people got sort of laissez-faire and just disconnected during COVID because it was,
Mhm.
I know even for me and you and I both suffer from some social anxiety, and I know it was a lot harder for me to leave the house even after it was okay to do so because I
Mhm.
got so accustomed to being home and my anxiety is a lot greater than it used to be.
Mhm.
And so if you're like us, that hinders you when it comes to volunteering outside of your home. So
Yeah. Yeah. But practice, I guess in practice we could loosen up. If we got used to being out and about, especially if you volunteer at the same place all the time, then once you get comfortable and you know people, I feel like maybe it gets better.
I think so too. I agree.
In the US, 15% of people support hunger and homelessness causes. That's good to know.
Yeah, I think that it's one of the ones that's the most obvious to people.
Mm,
And so there have been times when I've thought, oh, I don't do enough for that type of cause anymore. When we used to feed the homeless every week, of course we were. But since in recent years, that's not the kind of volunteering I've done. And I've not felt as passionate about it. And then occasionally I'll feel guilty for not feeling passionate about it. But because it's such a great passion for a lot of people, I think that you should go with the things that you're more passionate about. And so the volunteer work that I do in other areas is received well. And if everybody just did what they were passionate about, would still be quite okay. We just need
mhm,
people to step up and do something, right? And then
mhm,
the last statistic is that most volunteers in the United States, this one surprised me, I have to say, are between the ages of 35 and 44. 4.
Hmm.
That really surprised me. I thought it was going to be much older. I thought it was going to be
Yeah.
like, because I guess because I'm older, and so I was shocked because I thought all of the people that I work with in these organizations I belong to, the majority of the ones who volunteer more are the older people like me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were talking about that before, how they have more time if they're
Mhm.
retired and stuff.
Yeah,
It's kind of surprising, you know.
yeah.
Of course, if the younger, I don't want to say we're less capable as we get older, but you know, we might, as we get older, we can't lift as much or
Mhm.
maybe maybe run around as much.
Speak for yourself.
It's good if young people are volunteering. We
My
gotta,
husband, my husband thinks that we can lift heavy things. He doesn't hesitate to say, "Hey, come and help me lift this 200-pound pump." I'm like,
that's,
I am a woman and I'm old. You can't expect me. Hey, I'm 70 years old and I can do it.
mhm.
But you're
I
all
know
so
I have been
strong.
asked
I'm not.
to help lift heavy things and been
I'm a
you know,
wimp.
been had eyes rolled at me because of my inability to lift things, and now I have two bad shoulders. So this is what happens when you get bullied
Amen.
into lifting things you shouldn't.
Amen. We were just talking about our bad shoulders at the beginning. And I've had
Hmm.
2 rotator cuff surgeries and they still don't work the way that you're supposed to.
Mm.
Wow.
Need to get some new shoulders.
That was good information about
Uh-huh.
volunteering. I hope that it encourages some of our listeners to consider how they can volunteer somewhere.
Hmm.
Think about your passions. What are you passionate about? What the the little study that I was doing, one of the questions we were asked early on was, what are some things, some causes that you are passionate about?
Hmm.
And then what can you do? What can you do to help with those causes? And
Hmm.
whether it's volunteering or serving as an employee, what can you do to help with those causes? And so I think that's important for us to take on volunteer roles with causes that are personal to us and that we're
Hmm.
passionate about.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you have any marinade for
Oh,
us
I
today?
do. I do. This is actually a little opposite day of, of volunteerism.
Okay.
And I'm gonna keep it simple. I just had one thought, and it was that, and this is partly because I have a whole crew of people who were in my house yesterday and will be coming back on Monday, tearing things out, hitting things with hammers and that kind of thing. And hopefully building some things back up starting next week. But and a lot of y'all probably have heard me say I like to do stuff myself around my house. I have a whole pile in the spare bedroom of items that I intend to install around my house, new outlets, a new ceiling light for the kids' bathroom, new smoke detectors, uh, those little pest repeller things that you plug in and they scare the mice and squirrels away. They're for, I bought them to scare away the squirrels and lizards. Oddly, I don't have mice and rats. I have squirrels and lizards, and and spiders. Too many spiders. But I have all these little things, and I have a whole host of things sitting there for Joey's new teenager bedroom that I need to work on. And I have all these projects, right? And my garden, the garden that never gets done. And uh, then when I started thinking about fixing up my bathroom, the thought actually occurred to me, could I rip everything out and build? Could I do that? And the answer is no. So my thought, my marinade for y'all is just because you can do stuff yourself does not mean you should. Some things should be left to professionals, whether it's so you don't electrocute yourself or so you don't overdo it and hurt your back or screw up and do it wrong and then have to call professionals. And not only have you spent the money on supplies so you could screw it up, but now you got to spend money paying somebody else for new supplies and labor. So you got to weigh that carefully.
Oh, yes, for sure. There's a line.
Yeah.
You can watch so many videos on YouTube, but it doesn't make you an expert.
Yeah. Even with my 3+ reading glasses on, sometimes I have trouble seeing that line, and I've had to really learn how to find it.
Well, that's good marinade.
Thank
That's
you.
something good for us to marinate on. I know you're excited about next week
Mhm.
because next week is Earth Day, and we're going to
Yeah.
talk about that.
Speaking of having something you're passionate about, I get very fired up about recycling and conservation and all that stuff. So I have been having a steady trickle of thoughts and writing them down. So next week I'm going to be I'm going to be as fired up as you were about organization and spring cleaning.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Especially since tomorrow, dun 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 dun, the recycling center is opening up so things can be dropped off. And I found out that not all plastics, this is a little sneak preview for those of you who will be listening next week. Not all plastics are as easily recyclable. And so sometimes you got to actually squint and look at what the little number is in the little triangle guy on there. And so I had to do a lot of that this week and pared down my stuff. Now, tomorrow is a busy day, so who knows if I'll make it over there tomorrow, but they're going to be open every Saturday. So pretty soon I
You
won't
have
have
to
to
live
go
in the
room
parish to,
recycling.
do you have to live in your parish to go to the recycle place?
I think so.
You'll have to let me know.
I'll have to look that up and check. A lot of places. We live in Louisiana where we have parishes. So by us, I know Orleans Parish, you have to live in Orleans Parish. There is a thing on, unfortunately, Sunday mornings that I think is any parish that's it's in City Park, it's in Tag Gormley. They do a thing, but it's Sunday mornings, which is not convenient for either of us. But
Right.
they're opening up one in Metairie. Uh or actually it's kind of on the line between Metairie and Kenner on tomorrow, which for y'all will be yesterday. If
So
you
in
live
addition to
locally.
ways to recycle, we're also going to talk about ways to reduce
Uh-huh.
so that you don't have to
Or
have as
reuse.
much to recycle. Reduce and reuse. Yes.
Reduce, reuse, recycle. There's a
Yes.
song.
Oh, I didn't know that. So
I don't know where I know it from.
I love the alliteration of the R's, and
Yes.
so that will in
Alliteration is
itself
good.
will get me all pumped up. All right. Well, that's a great
Woo-hoo.
conversation I'm looking forward to.
Yep.
But until then, make yourself a priority.
And take care of you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to keep up on all the latest sauce. See you next time.